and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten. With me is Andrew Carlson from Canis Hoopus. Andrew, how you doing?
Good, man. It's a good time to be a Wolves fan right now. They're rolling. Nice win in Milwaukee. Nice win on Sunday against the Spurs. Fun time to lay eyes on the T-Wolves.
Yeah, fun time to watch some basketball. Pretty tough times in Minneapolis continuing. So even tonight, another 2 people were shot by ICE. So just before we start, just want to give support to everyone out there that's peacefully protesting. Glad to see everyone out doing that. And for people that don't live in Minnesota, I encourage you to research it. It's been a lot here locally, and last time I shouted out the Pence fundraiser. So if you go scroll to the end of the pod last time, there's some fundraisers to help people out that aren't comfortable leaving their homes at this time. But yeah, with that said, just wanted to, as long as they're going to be in our city, I'm going to keep shouting it out because I think it's just really important stuff. But
no, but it's a good thing to call out because I think there's 2 things to talk about here. It's an extremely it's hard to even really focus on what's happening on the basketball court right now because there's just so many things off of it that are wrong and can strain people and make it hard. Even just going around Minneapolis right now, it's pretty heartbreaking to see like what's happening. And there's 2 sides of the coin here. There's that one, and I just hope that it's a good time. Unfortunately for the Timberwolves to play well, just to maybe give people a little bit of relief, a little bit of reprieve, and maybe for 40 minutes, be able to watch something that can bring you some joy. So hopefully that's the case, but it's incomprehensible right now, man. And that's cool that you at least include some stuff in the show links to direct people in the right way, because I think that's what a lot of people want to do right now. They want to help in some form, some way, and that's what we do here.
absolutely, yeah. I guess we'll try to bring. I don't know how much. Kind of feels like the distractions are important, and also bringing attention to it is important. So finding that balance is interesting, but ultimately, other than peacefully protesting, there's not much more we can do. Other than, I guess, like you said, talk some Wolves, and they've been playing well. They've won 6 of 7 games to start 2026, including just a walloping of the Bucks without Ant, without Gobert, just no problem. It was over before it even started. We'll talk about the Bucks after we talk about the Wolves, because I think where the Bucks are at right now are very interesting. I think everyone can see how poorly they've been playing, but Wolves win 139-106. They're up by as many as 41 points in this game. Finish and final score ends up as a 33-point differential. But I think the place to start is Joan Beringer. I don't think there's any other place to start. He has 13 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. But the defense was the biggest thing. Obviously, we all know that he's a great defender, but he's 19 years old, and he already looked like he was a plus 30 in this game. Now, pretty much everyone that played more than a few minutes in this game was plus big. But I just thought for a 19-year-old kid, he looked incredibly ready to play. And maybe part of that was due to just like a nice matchup for him. Obviously, Giannis isn't a nice matchup for anyone, but with Miles Turner out and Bobby Portis kind of taking the main load, like it is a nice spot to insert him in. And when they play the Rockets and Thunder next, maybe that'll change, especially as Rudy comes back. But I think it's just, I don't know how you can't be anything but super excited about like what Beringer can do. Maybe not this year, but like certainly next year, the year after that, all like into his prime or whatever. The touch around the rim was great. The help rotation defense was great. I thought one play that ended up being like a foul on Giannis, but a good foul because he was going to go lay it in. But like just the strength to not let Giannis go dunk on you and get an and one and actually make him go shoot some free throws. I was incredibly impressed by Beringer. I thought it would be just, he's only played a handful of games in the G League. He's only been playing basketball really for a couple of years here. I thought it'd be a little bit more rough, and obviously it's just one game. Wow, it was an incredibly impressive debut into the rotation debut for Beringer.
Yeah, I think you touched on it a little bit about how it was a good spot for him to play in I think it made a lot of sense, and naturally he felt like he was going to play, and I think that's part of it too, is preparing yourself to play when you make a big debut like that. I think the thing that flashed to me the most in talking about some of the help side blocks and some of the help side defense that he was doing are his instincts flashed right off the bat. Like his defensive instincts are really, really good, and that was the scouting report for him in the draft. Is and part of it is the soccer part of him, like understanding positioning, understanding floor spacing, understanding like when you're playing soccer and you are comprehending how to defend and attack the pitch, like positioning is so important, and I think he has that down to a T from when he's played that for so long. And that was the book on him in the draft. Raw athlete, very, very raw, but has the instincts, has hands, and like he has some of these like tools that can help him at the very minimum, play decent basketball right away. I do think it is very important to call out that, there's a lot of people right now that are saying he should be regularly in the rotation. I disagree with that. I do think there are times for him, like if it is so glaringly bad that a backup big does need to be in the game, and there is a rim presence that needs to be in the game, and Nas and Julius just aren't getting it done, trimming back Jalen Clark's minutes, trimming back Mike's minutes a little bit, and getting Beringer some run with that second unit in some of those spots where he's obviously needed. I think fit within the game flow is going to be very, very important for him this year, just to be able to get his sea legs under him a little bit. I still am pushing back against the idea that he's an every night player right now. Just because there's these ebbs and flows as a rookie. We've seen it. It looks really good one game. It may not look good for the next three. He's a young player, and we need to give him that, and we need to give him time to grow, and really be able to kind of expand his skills in a really forthcoming environment for him in Iowa too. Like give him some time to go back down to Iowa, play some games, get some confidence back. I mean, we saw it last year with Terrence Shannon. Like when he played in Iowa and then he came up and was able to make an impact right away, and we thought he was going to be this big impact player this year. Like you just never know with these young players. It was a great debut for him. He flashed a lot of things that I think should get Wolves fans very, very excited. But this idea that Finch now needs to find minutes for him every single night, I'm just not so sure about. I think it needs to be a game by game flow of the game basis and what the game is calling for in order to get him some minutes. But I do think that the Wolves really should give him, it should not be the last game that Joan Beringer sees initial early run in the rotation. I will say that.
Yeah, and that's more or less what Finch said after the game. Finch about just keeping Beringer in the rotation. If they will be able to keep Beringer in the rotation, here's his quote: "We can. People are going to have to sacrifice minutes, but if he plays like this, then we should be benefiting from everybody. We'll step by step this. Since draft night, we've long believed in this kid, and this is just the beginning." So I think that points to what you're saying, is that like he specifically step by step this. I don't think he's just going to jump into the rotation as the 9th or 10th man or whatever, especially because, and there's a quote from Mike Nori after a Jack Borman question comparing the Wolves' three bigs to the mid-aughts Yankees and Derek Jeter, and just like being the backup shortstop on the Yankees, which I think I said this last when I first talked about this, but it's like it's interesting to use that when like the owner of the team was like kind of the backup shortstop for that Yankees team in a way. But like, there's just not a lot of minutes. And I do kind of, this is a trademark Dane Moore thing, is like play the three bigs more, because that's the only way you're going to get Beringer in there without lowering Nas or Julius or Gobert's minutes, which is kind of like you just can't, other than a minute or two, you really can't. Those guys need to play how much they've been playing. The only way you're going to do that is to play those three together, so that like Beringer can come in and be the true backup center with like Jaden for whoever else. I don't know. They've been seemingly, other than like a couple of possessions here and there, they've been very hesitant to do that. I'm sure it's for good reason. They just don't feel like that's a quality lineup, at least against like a neutral matchup or whatever. But at the very least, like, to me, the minute one of their three bigs are out, like Beringer should step into the rotation. To me, that's just that. Even if it's like, obviously it's much easier when it's Gobert, when it's like kind of a 1-for-1 in terms of style of play. But even if it's Julius, even if it's Nas, and like obviously we would like everyone to be healthy for every single game, but like the Wolves have been, other than Ant, have been unbelievably healthy to start the year. And like someone's bound to miss a week. Someone's bound to or even just a game. Like I think that's where Beringer can start to get. He's not going to get 30 minutes, even 30 the minutes against the Bucks where they played him through garbage time. But I think, and I'm starting to wonder, like, my thing was like the biggest need for this team is a true backup center. Like that's what they need to trade for. And I'm almost like moving off that a little bit because obviously if you sign someone to the minimum, or trade for, you're not like sacrifice, fine, that's great. But like, I don't know if they really should be giving up any like second round pick asset when it seems like Beringer can fill that role as well as anyone you could get off the trade market.
Well, and I think too, it's going back to the three big thing. I mean, that's kind of, alluding to when it does make sense for Beringer to come in the game, trimming back Jalen Clark's minutes maybe a little bit. I think that would probably make sense. And playing, Mike, Nas. I think because if Beringer is on the floor, I think Mike should probably also be on the floor. Just
or
to
Joe
be
Ingles.
able, or Joe Ingles, who has eyes in the back of his head when Berenger's on the floor. I mean, to be honest, some of the passes that Joe is making to Joan, even in garbage time, over the last couple games, pretty unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I do think that there is something there. I mean, for me, like looking at the backup big thing, like some of the guys I was looking at was like a Jalen Smith in Chicago, where it's like, if you're going to be doing that, then that's a $9 million contract. And so that would be like Rob.
You're gonna have to trade Rob.
A minimal asset, and you'll probably get maybe some draft compensation back, like a second round pick or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Beringer before that, like, why was he not getting minutes? I think the coach is just like, why would we play him when we like throw him into a situation when it's relatively unnecessary? Let's wait and see what he has when he is actually legitimately needed and can prepare for his first NBA action that would be meaningful. And now that he's done that, and now that there's some proof of that performance, I think that the cuffs could be taken off a little bit there. 43 net rating against Milwaukee, 100 defensive rating, 143 offensive rating. I mean, he navigates the dunker area so well. And so I think paired with Julius and Nas, like two bigs that can stretch the floor and play make, like there could be something there. I think Mike has to be on the floor with them. The other thing too is like Nas actually does make sense at the three, and Finch actually talked about this with Paul Allen in his weekly interview too, about putting Nas possibly at the three in some of these situations. Nas defends wings better than he defends bigs. And frankly, like he's not good against either of them. It's been pretty brutal from Nas Reed this year on the defensive end. But, if it means getting a little bit more protection at the rim and being able to rebound the ball a little bit better, you can take a couple extra field goals with him defending a wing as opposed to him defending a big and not being able to really do anything with the front court that you have.
Yeah, and I guess to be fair to Nas as well, it's like in his plus minus or whatever, his offensive game does outweigh the defensive struggle. So obviously, like even like the Nas and Randall minutes, like those are positive minutes. It's just like they're incredibly high points for both teams that the Wolves slightly outweigh. But
I would push back on that though. I think in the playoffs it would get exposed very quickly. And I mean, there's definitely times like against teams where they just kind of have the matchup advantage where like you can go small and play pretty quick. And yesterday against Milwaukee was certainly one of those times, but they hemorrhage points. Like if Nas is not performing at an extremely efficient offensive pace, I mean, that is just not a profitable pairing at all. And so they really need to make it worthwhile on that end. And so if Julius gets into his thing where he's just like, all right, I'm going to take the next 3 shots. And then Nas is like, well, I haven't gotten a couple up for a while. And so I'm going to take a couple shots in this next possession. Like when you get into that mode, it can get pretty ugly pretty quick. And it's very matchup dependent on when that lineup can work, which again, I mean, that's where you have Beringer to be able to maybe deploy when you do have those matchups where you need a little bit of extra rim protection and rebounding, because he he was really, I mean, we talk about all the things that he was good at. I think we need to talk a little bit more about his rebounding. He's got really good hands, man. Like what he showed, and being able to catch the ball and go up around the rim and grab it. Like when Chris Finch talks about rebounding, when he kind of dings Nas sometimes in his press conferences, where he's kind of watching the ball and he doesn't go up and grab it. Or like I know he's talked to Rudy. He's been pretty hard on Rudy before publicly about his rebounding and talking about what he's seen on film that doesn't work very well. Beringer does not do those things. Beringer sees the ball and he goes up and grabs it. And he's got really, really good hands. So that was another thing that was extremely impressive for me. And if they need that type of a boost, throw him in there and see what happens. I would like to see that at some point here, that 3-man lineup make its way onto the floor.
Yeah, because it's basically the only way Beringer is going to get minutes without taking away Nas, Julius, or Rudy's minutes, which again can't happen. But just thinking about, obviously for this year, I think we're both kind of pumping the brakes maybe just a little bit in terms of what Beringer can provide, but like certainly by next year, the year after that, like he's going to be incredible value, and it's something that I look at his contract is just going to be an incredibly valuable piece for the Wolves, who are already in a good spot with their salary cap sheet post cat trade. Like that was obviously on the court, they believed in it, but like off the court with the cap sheet, like right this second with Leonard Miller's team option on the books, the Wolves have about $24 million in space below the second apron. If we're going to treat that second apron basically as a hard cap of sorts, like that's compared to right this second, they have $3.5 million in second apron space. And combine that, it's like once the offseason hits, they briefly dip below the luxury tax. You can make trades that take in more money. We're right this second until the end of the season. The Wolves can't do that. Beringer's contract is going to continue to like help them make trades where if we'll see what the rest of this season kind of plays out. I don't think they're trading any of the top 6 guys. And so the minute you're not trading any of those 6 guys, there's just not any, and it's, but maybe if I include Mike, I know some people have kind of floated Mike and maybe I'm wrong here, but like, I just have a hard time seeing them trade Mike.
Not happening.
Even if it makes sense, like truly on the court or whatever, I don't see it, but
not happening.
If you do,
I think it's one of those things where Mike signed the deal that he did. He took pretty well below, not pretty well below, but I think he took below what he could have gotten out of the market when he signed his extension, coming off the season that he had for 3 years, get some stability, be here long term. And I think that there was kind of a handshake guarantee that he probably wasn't going to get traded in the sunset of his career. And I wouldn't be surprised either if Mike not getting traded when he very well probably should be in some of these trades, and I think he knows that. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he does a nice little favor for the Wolves and does a little veteran minimum the next couple of years, if that's something that he still maybe thinks he has a little bit of juice left in the tank.
This is me totally speculating. I think this is Mike's last year. I have no information. I have certainly not talked to Mike or the Wolves, anything like that. That's kind of my feeling, is that this will be it for Mike. Maybe I'm wrong, like you said.
Unless he slides into the Joe Ingles spot and plays a little bit more useful minutes. That could also be.
The Wolves would absolutely love to have, if he's playing NBA basketball next year and they don't trade him at the deadline, I would fully expect Mike to be back on the minimum next year. And you get like, I don't remember what it is, like your cap money counts against the minimum, but you get paid like twice that and the league covers the difference or something like that. But yeah, I just
wouldn't be surprised if both sides with the Wolves and Mike are at a spot where they know that they're working in good faith, right? Like they worked in good faith on his extension. They might work in good faith on not trading him, and they might work in good faith if he wants a roster spot next year and be able to accommodate that at a minimum salary. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the nature of the relationship at this point.
And to be honest, like if Mike were to like be cool with the trade, to me there's only like 3 teams I would say he'd either want to win a ring or go home. OKC and Denver are the only 2 teams that like would give you a better shot of winning the title than the Wolves. I'm going to come out and say that.
Mike Conley in an Oklahoma City Thunder jersey would make many people
there's
mad.
Just no why unless he's getting bought out and signing there at a minimum. That's just not happening. And then the third team would be Memphis. And that would only be if he's willing, if he's going to retire. And obviously we don't have no idea what Mike's plans are.
I just think it's at this point in time, um, Mike is worth his contract for what he brings to the locker room. I mean, I know that just from, us being in the locker room and being around, like I think Mike leaving this locker room would be pretty consequential for what it would end up being. He's a guy who, well, one, he's over 25, and there's not very many of those guys that are on the team that are still in the rotation and play. He's a smart player. He organizes the floor, and he is not afraid to pull guys aside and let them know, like, hey, you missed this. Like, you need to do better on this. Like, and guys respect him because of how long he's been in the league for. I think that's his value right now. Like, he if he's on an $11 million contract, he brings $9.5 million worth of that to this team, and that suddenly leaving, I think that becomes a big issue, frankly.
Yeah, and also, like, who cares if he's getting paid like $5 million more than he theoretically should? It doesn't matter. Like, that amount of money, like, even if the Wolves, like, in the offseason could have cut his contract in half, it wouldn't have mattered. It just would have gone to Nas or Julius. Like, it doesn't really, it's not a big hindrance. So it's not a number that I don't think anyone is worried with. But to go back to kind of where this started was that if you're not trading Mike either, the next highest contract is Rob's $6.5 million, which that is a Rob Dillingham trade is either certainly a high possibility or maybe even a likelihood at this point. I think it's been telling when Mike sat out for rest, Rob still wasn't in the rotation and out of the lineup with an injury. Rob's still not in the rotation. I don't really know exactly what's going on there other than the minutes Rob has played. Like, just look at him. It just hasn't been successful. And I think a change of scenery for both him and probably the organization would probably be best. So that's, if there's going to be a trade, I think it would be taking Rob $6.5 million. And then if you want to include either Joe Ingles, which Joe Ingles might fall into the Mike category in terms of handshake deals or just like understandings. Like, I don't know if Joe Ingles wants to get dumped to, I mean, I'm sure he'd be fine with Orlando, whereas I believe his family still is.
Miller in there before Joe
That was
Ingles.
the other. Is Leonard Miller 2.2 gets you almost up to $9 million. So if there's a $8.5 million or less player that you can trade Dillingham or Miller for, you could go ahead and do that. It would drop them down to 13 teams. But like I said, with $3.5 million in second apron space, and you're only playing, if you're signing someone to get back up to 14 roster spots, you're only playing for them for half a season. So $3.5 million is plenty to stay under the second apron. But yeah, that just thinking about like Beringer, there's just not, I don't know, like almost like the talk has been a backup big. I mean, is that Beringer? There's been talk about like a backup guard. Well, the next guy we're going to talk about here is Bones. So I'm almost like leaning towards maybe a backup wing, someone that is more playoff ready than Jalen Clark is maybe someone you could talk yourself into.
Because they thought that was going to be Terrence Shannon this year, and that hasn't been the
I don't think. I mean, there's no use to giving up on Shannon. I think next year get him healthy again, and if it's still looking like this, then you're looking at declining his 2027, 28 player or team option. But yeah, for this season, there's just no way. It's been halfway through the season and he's been one of the worst players in the NBA. Like I said, get him healthy. We'll see what the future holds. But yeah, I guess to go back to Bones, that's what I wanted to talk about. Bones Hyland, incredible game in this Milwaukee series. In this Milwaukee game from Tuesday. He's just been awesome. Like, I don't know, other than like missing shots, I think he's just been exactly like what the Wolves have needed. And even like I have had very little other than a shot here, shot there. His shot selection has been more than fine to me. And this Milwaukee game was probably the most like pull up deep twos he's taken. Most of them went in, and like in a game without Ant, a little extra ball creation from Bones Hyland, I don't think is the worst thing in the world. And obviously he was a plus 41 in this game.
Yeah.
Set the Wolves franchise record for plus minus off the bench. I mean, if we want to talk about Mike, Bones and Mike basically played the exact same 21 minutes. Bones was plus 41. Mike was exactly 0. Not a great, not the best sign. Even admitting plus minus can be a noisy stat. But Bones, 23 points, 9 of 16 from the field, 5 3-pointers. 5 assists. Just I the note I wrote down is the new Nah. And I think that hopefully that's what they found here. Now going back to the cap sheet, Bones is a unrestricted free agent, and hey, one thing I can do on my little spreadsheet is take off this little non-guaranteed button I had on his contract. That date passed, so we're fully guaranteed on some Bones Hyland, $2.3 million this year. That'll be one thing if they can get him on the contract they signed not to, that 2-year deal for like a ham sandwich and a I voted sticker. That's all they paid Nikhil for those 2 seasons. If they can get him on that sweetheart deal again, that'd be ideal. Kind of same applies to Jalen Clark, who is a restricted free agent, which will just with how restricted free agency works, will tamp down Jalen Clark's market. But yeah, it's another player now that the Wolves have grabbed off the scrap heap and turned into, it seems like, a quality rotation player. Obviously, Bones is Tim Connolly's guy. That's been clear since Denver, since it seemed like Bones was on his way to Europe or China or wherever, like the next part of his basketball career. Connolly brought him here, didn't see much time last season, but since getting a full-time contract this year, Bones has stepped into, like a bench scoring guy. It's like the Jalen Noel kind of type of player that they've been looking for off the bench, and Bones has been awesome.
Yeah, this is a season high. Last night. Third player in Timberwolves history to have 20 points, 5 assists off the bench. Joins Jeff Teague and Wally Zerbiak. So that's a pretty good list.
Hopefully Bones can have the podcasting career of old Mr. Teague.
Yeah, well, that's hard to achieve by many. I will say that. I think the thing that exemplifies Bones's time with the Wolves, and it is a very similar trajectory to Nah, because essentially what Chris Finch has done has said, let's just do what you're really good at for now. Like, don't worry about the other stuff. Don't worry about like playing iso ball, getting caught up in 2 defenders, driving into traffic. Like, you're not going to get trapped on this team. You're playing next to Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards. You will never, ever see 2 defenders. So and as a matter of fact, not only are you not going to see 2 defenders, most of the time when you catch the ball, you're probably going to be wide open on the perimeter. So just pull it. I mean, like, I don't think and shout out to Bones because he's made the shots, he's made the plays, he's done all of the right things. But what he's done hasn't been extremely complex or reinvented the wheel. He's catching and shooting, he's pushing the pace in transition, he's getting off the ball quickly, and he's going to the rim when it makes sense. Like, he's just playing a smart brand of basketball right now. And it's very similar to what he did in Denver in those first couple years next to Jokic, because a lot of his production came next to Jokic. I mean, he did play a role in some of those non-Jokic minutes that were pretty successful in that year that he was with Denver. But he plays very well off the ball and off of stars that kind of play inside the perimeter. And so credit to him. He's very much so revitalized his career. He is also, I would credit him for saving the Wolves season, if I'm going to be honest, because this thing was going nowhere very fast. There was no guard play. Finch was searching with Rob. He was getting frustrated with Mike. He had tried Bones early in the season, and it just didn't really work very well. I remember, I think it was one of the preseason games that I covered, Bones was like, he was like 3 for 16 from the field. And it was like, this guy's an NBA player. Like, it was a completely different player than what we're seeing now. So this resurgence, this like little thing that he's had going over the last couple months, I would credit it with saving the Wolves season, because I think that I don't think they're going to need to get, I mean, now that I say this, they probably will go trade for a Kobe White or something like this, but he has made it so that they do not need to trade for a backup point guard right now. I do think, like, there certainly are some moves to be made on the margins. This roster is a little bit weird. but they don't have pressure on them to make a move at the deadline, like it was maybe initially perceived that they would. This season was going in a really, really, really bad direction. And because of Bones Hyland coming on and giving a spark off the bench and just making the right play with a talented group of players, he has saved the Wolves season and it has turned them into one of the premier teams in the West. And in a year where Oklahoma City, like they're still Oklahoma City, but are they the 73-9 team that people thought that they were maybe going to be? Turns out they're not.
Yeah, and I think back to Finch had an answer to a Dane Moore question that was like basically talking about the lack of minutes for like the young guys at the time it was more about Clark and TJ and Rob, but now Finch said like if the role is 10 minutes a night, shouldn't you go out and crush those 10 minutes? And I think there's fair pushback to say like that's true, but like maybe young guys need more of like a direct line to minutes to progress. But I also just think about it's been stark the difference of Bones coming in and basically playing Rob's old minutes and just absolutely killing them. I think like it just shows that, and maybe that'll come with time. Maybe Rob goes to a different organization, gets that more consistent playing time, and he can flourish or whatever. And so maybe it's not as much about Rob as it is about Bones. Just like you mentioned, filling a role, giving the Wolves exactly what they need. And I know I compared him to Nikhil, but the difference kind of with him and Nikhil is Bones had kind of a history of success in NBA minutes. I mean, I'm looking at his stats now. In 111 games in his season and a half in Denver, he averaged almost 11 points a night on more than a point per shot, while making a couple threes a game. Like he was a solid player for them, and it kind of with the Clippers and toward the end of his Denver stint as well, it just kind of slowly fell apart. Probably just needed to hook up with his old buddy Tim Connolly again, but I don't see why he can't kind of return to being that like that he already has, like that bench scorer off the bench. That the Wolves have that. I'm not sure they need another point guard or even like a small-ish guard in this rotation, especially if they're going to continue to play Mike 10 to 15 to 20 minutes a night. Because the starting lineup's been great. And in those point guard minutes, we haven't seen like the turnover, the ball pressure issue. The starting lineup's great. So I'm not sure you really need another big. So like I said,
Dante does his job too. When he rebounds the ball, he pushes the pace and gets off the ball quickly and initiates the play.
I kind of want to, I know like if you go look at PRs, the Timberwolves PR posts like the starting lineup, and I'm sure they don't decide the order, but like DiVincenzo, Dante's listed first. I kind of want to go, I think like you got to switch that. Ant's the point guard. Dante's the shooting guard. Like put Ant first, please.
They give the courtesy nod to Dante.
I mean, I'm sure I'm sure like there's not much thought. It was like Mike was the first name listed, and they switched Dante in the starting lineup for Mike, so they just put Dante. Like I'm sure I'm reading into it more than more than anyone else. But I mean, all the other players are listed. Jaden's listed third, Julius is listed fourth, and Rudy's listed fifth. So. Yeah, speaking of Julius, I thought just this was another he absolutely dominated. And I've said in the past about Rudy when they play bad teams, worse than even this Milwaukee team. It's like sometimes the Wolves win just because they have Rudy Gobert. Like you could have thrown any old 4 other people out there, and it's like, well, the other teams couldn't score. And this was a game where I just thought the other team just didn't have anything for Julius Randle. Even, I mean, they could have, they stuck Giannis on him, but like even then, like Julius was just dominating, and he's really the 9 games Ant has missed, he's dominated all 9 of them. He's averaging 26.4 points per game. Thank you, Dane Moore, for the stat there. 26.4 points per game in the games Ant has missed from Julius. He's just absolutely dominating in this Bucks game. 29 points, 12 of 18 shooting, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. I know like the Cat trade continues to be a big thing, and the Knicks aren't playing great as of now, but Julius has given them basically everything you need, and especially on games Ant is out. And it's not even like he plays bad when Ant is in. It's just more like when they need him to step up, when the offensive load is greater on him without the Wolves leading scorer in there, Julius has answered that bell pretty much every single time.
And I hate to kind of take it away from Julius a little bit, but the more I looked at, because I wrote about Jaden McDaniels the other night after the Heat game, and the more I looked into Jaden McDaniels, the more synonymous him and Julius Randle became in my mind. Underrated. They're one of the best 2-man combos on the team. When they're on the floor together. Julius actually is a member of the top 2 3-man lineups that the Wolves have. If you look at lineups that have played at least 200 minutes, Julius number 1 is Gobert, Randall, DiVincenzo. Second one is Randall, Gobert, and Jaden. The other thing too is that Jaden has the best field goal percentage when he gets passes. But he's second to Rudy, but when getting passed to by Julius Randle, he has the second best field goal percentage on the team. He shoots 52% when he shoots the ball after getting the pass from Julius Randle. Like, they are a really good combination with each other. And it's not just from a starting lineup perspective, it's from the reserve perspective too. Another thing I included in my article, when Jaden is on the floor with Naz and Julius, the front court pairing that we previously bashed on, their net rating is 6.9. Nice. When Jaden is off the floor and Julius and Naz are on, the net rating is minus 4.75. It is a huge swing when those two play together, namely because Jaden's hitting shots this year, and he's making himself such a viable option for Julius when he gets into trouble, and draws a lot of gravity. But it's the ebbs and flows that we see from Julius throughout the course of a basketball season. He started out the year so well, distributing, playing so well from the elbows, being decisive and getting to the basket. And that kind of what left for a while. Like I would say before the last few games, the previous couple months,
almost the whole month of December,
were very bad basketball from Julius Randle, and his 3-pointer wasn't falling too to cap that off, and he was still kind of taking those at volume, which was a frustrating brand of basketball to watch. But now it's back, and yesterday was a prime example of that. And when he is playing this way, he's one of the best post playmakers in the league. I mean, he just is. And when teams don't respect that, the Wolves will be a big problem. And the more that him and Jaden McDaniels are on the floor together, they are a can't miss duo. I mean, you do miss it because you don't really think of them as the premier pairing that the Wolves might have, but they just play so well off of each other. They're switching on defense, because oftentimes their guys are setting picks for one another and they're needing to communicate defensively. They need each other offensively. They're both willing passers now too. Like, Jaden's passing and ball and like playmaking instincts have gotten so much better this year. Like, they've both been catalysts for ball movement when they've wanted to too. And so they both just set the tone for how lineups play, and it shows. Like, the advanced numbers show that.
Yeah, and I think maybe the biggest thing of why this season's been far more enjoyable last year is the Wolves are just a proven team organization at this point. They've been to the back-to-back Western Conference Finals. No team is going to look at this team like, if the Spurs make the playoffs, I'm sure there will be some idiot that goes, well, what have they done? They stink, right? The Wolves aren't that anymore. They've won 4 playoff series in the past 2 years. And it's now been 2 out of the last 3 seasons where the Wolves have kind of been a disaster for a lot of when they first got Rudy, that season, basically prior to the D'Lo trade, was pretty much a disaster. And even when they had D'Lo, they would respond to poor stretches incredibly well. And obviously once they got Mike and Nikhil, they went on a run. And last year, post-Cat trade, they were a disaster for large portions of that season. Right at the beginning of the season, obviously remember the game in Toronto where Julius didn't pass to Rudy, and then obviously Julius and Dante got hurt, which eventually became a good thing. Wolves lost like 6 out of 8 games at one point just because like they were playing good teams without half the roster or whatever. But they responded to that incredibly well, and I think that's what's been impressive in these last 6 games is that Atlanta loss and the Brooklyn loss right before were disasters. And it was representative of like the moody crap and the energy and all you want to talk about. And what did they immediately, they got basically 1 practice day and they figured it all out. And they probably will have another couple games where they look like crap. Even the Cleveland loss was a second half that you throw in the dumpster. But this is just a proven team. The Wolves are going to be in the top 6, and at this point, it feels like they're going to be in the top 4. And at that point, they'll be slight favorites in the first round. And assuming kind of chalk happens from there, they're going to be in a heavyweight fight in the second round. And obviously, shit can happen, so I'm projecting too far forward. But this is a proven team, and that applies to Julius most because he's going to have another rough couple weeks. It's going to happen. Like he'll have a moody stretch, and that's fine or whatever. But as sure as I am that Rudy or Randall will have a couple bad weeks, I'm just as sure that Randall will have another all-star caliber month on the other side of it.
Absolutely.
And Randall, and I think maybe the same applies to the playoffs, that I'm confident that Randall's going to play well in the playoffs, and what needs to be figured out is like a team against Oklahoma City or against Denver. What can he provide? And I guess we'll wait until mid-April to figure that one out, right?
And the Denver thing is going to be very, very interesting here. Especially, I mean, they'll get Jokic back probably mid-February, I would imagine.
I believe Shams said by the end of the month. And yeah. to not to cut you off, but I think we were all hoping that Denver would fall in the standings, and they probably will lose a couple more games before Jokic comes back. But this idea that they were going to fall into the play-in, Peyton Watson is not letting that happen.
Not happening. And I believe they have 2 more games left against Denver this year. So it'll be very interesting. Just one. It'll be very interesting to see. I mean, if we can get a little bit of a finger to the wind on how these teams match up at full strength, just because we haven't had that yet. And that's like, I think, I'm kind of tired of playing Denver. Frankly, it's happened so much. But it's one of those things where you just can't help but wonder what it would be like if they played another playoff series, because it would kick ass.
I think I've shared this before. Last game of the season last year, when the Wolves had won, they had locked up a top 6 seed. They were already locked the 6 seed specifically, and they were waiting to see. No, actually, they could have been the 5 seed, I believe. I don't remember. Either way, they were waiting on the Golden State and whoever game to finish, and that determined their playoff series. If Golden State had won, they were going to be playing Denver, and Golden State ended up losing, so they got the Lakers. And I remember we were all in the locker room waiting for like media to start, because all the players everyone wanted to watch the end of that game before doing media. Also Rory McIlroy is winning the Masters at the time. But Nas, we were kind of asking them kind of off the record, who do you want to see here? And it was mixed. And Nas goes, "I'm tired of eating chicken nuggets." He said Nas didn't want to play the Nuggets either, because that's what you just mentioned there. You're tired of kind of going against Denver. Well, apparently Nas Reed was too, because at that time, the previous 2 postseasons, they'd gone against Denver. And I do remember I wanted to play Denver, and how that playoffs played out, I think, was very clear that the Wolves got the better end of the deal, having to go through LA instead.
Hey, you play them 4 times every year. You played them twice in the last, couple playoffs. Yeah, I don't blame them. It's a
game 82 way back when.
It's a boring yet exciting time every single game. And that Christmas Day game, that was just so much fun.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's just like it's the same players every single
Christmas
time.
Day game. That's the good stuff, man. Like, obviously they lost and it was tough, and they should have won. They also should have lost. Like, whatever. That's the good stuff.
It's a show.
Like, if you can't enjoy that, like, you're kind of, I felt like this about the Luka step back game winner in game 2 of the West Finals. And obviously that was a dagger. And before that shot, I thought they could win that series. And when that shot went in, I thought their season was over. But like, I remember walking out and go like, that's pretty cool. Like, not the Wolves losing, but like just getting your heart ripped out, getting it stomped on, losing in that way. Like, that's also the good stuff. That is so much better. That getting your nuts crushed is so much better than the crap of the past 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. And if they drew the Nuggets again in the playoffs, I'd be like, again. But then I'd be like, this is going to be the best series probably in the whole playoffs.
Yeah, I hope somehow Denver falls to 4 and the Wolves are 2 or 3 and Denver and OKC are on the other side of the bracket. But assuming we get either if we get another Denver or Oklahoma City playoff series, like that is just going to, even the first round against Houston, San Antonio, as like if the season ends today, they'd be playing like that. Is just going to be even the Lakers, who are meh, like the West is just think if they're in the East, I would be like the Wolves would be in my mind, if the Wolves are in the East, would be the favorites to win the East, like by a pretty wide margin. Maybe not that far above the Knicks, but like
I think they would be favored. I don't think they'd be favored by a super wide margin, but I see exactly what you're saying.
But like going through the Knicks and the Pistons, it's not way different than the
correct, not even remotely close. But yeah, hey, Wolves Nuggets on March 1st. It looks like an afternoon game too.
So they beat him last year in the afternoon. That was probably Rob's best game as a Timberwolf, was in that that matinee.
They always kind of have the matinee Nuggets game late in the season, I feel like. I feel like that's a springtime tradition almost. So looking forward to that. I hope both teams are full strength, because that would be a nice little treat to kind of wrap the division schedule at least.
Absolutely. Okay. I did want to talk about the Bucks a little bit, because I'm going to have a piece coming out tomorrow that's going to talk about this game from the Wolves side, but a little bit from the Bucks side, because I think it's time. I think it's time for them to let go. It's not, they're 17-23 in the worst conference. They're 11th in the Eastern Conference, behind the Chicago Bulls. I thought it was a smart decision for them to keep Giannis for this season, because the East was weak. Obviously they didn't really improve their team last year. Dame out, Miles Turner in. But like it's halfway through the season. I know Giannis has missed time, but they just lost to the Nuggets without Jokic and Murray, and the Wolves without Ant and Rudy. Julius is the Wolves' second best player, but like whatever. They lost to the Nuggets and the Wolves, who are both missing their best two players. Like, it's just done. It's over. And right now, they should be focusing on getting the most amount back for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I, with that said, I understand how incredibly difficult that is to do. They went 40 years between players like this. Yeah, I looked it up. It was 39 years from when Kareem left to when they drafted Giannis. Almost 40 years. And to be honest, they probably, just like every other team, will go another 40 years without a player like this. So I know how incredibly difficult it is. It's over. It's just over. They just have no shot. And I think I personally just think it's time for them to move on, get what you can, get your picks, if you can convince Atlanta to send you your pick next year. You've probably won too many games to really wherever their pick ends up, whatever. But like, if you can get your pick back next year, you can just full on tank for a year and then try to slowly rebuild. It's going to be a long road back, but I don't know. It may not make sense for them to do it at the deadline, but in the off season, it's just time.
Yeah, I'm a little sensitive towards this one, because I love the big player on the small market team. Like, I feel like a lot of Wolves fans too can probably empathize with Bucks fans. We hold no ill will towards them in the East. It's different in football, and it's different in other sports. It's just basketball is. There's no real Bucks rivalry there, and I have a little bit of an affinity for Giannis being on a small market team. You know, right now, what I saw from the Bucks on Tuesday was a team that's just completely quit. There's no want to play defense. There was zero ball contained.
It was so bad.
There was zero wanting to guard the rim. They are a team that has quit. I would fire Doc Rivers. I don't think that it hasn't worked out since he's joined that franchise. That's my last lever I'm pulling. I believe Dave Yeager's on that staff.
But like, Doc Rivers was the last lever. Like, that's kind of my point. Is like, they already got to last lever. They're on their negative levers.
but my point with this one is, it's like, you know, I'm not trading him at the deadline. Like, that's just not my, like, I'm not trading Giannis Antetokounmpo at the deadline. Like, the deadline is not going to be very active.
There's too many teams under aprons that you won't get your proper return.
The off season is going to be kind of your time to look at that a little bit more. So fire Doc Rivers and see if this team can maybe do something and pick it up during the second half of the year. I mean, the Kyle Kuzma trade, hand in the air. I was a fan of the Kyle Kuzma trade when it happened. I thought that was actually going to be a pretty useful move for the Bucks.
Vibes wise, though, Middleton out, Kuzma in. Vibes wise, is just
Could be better.
Brutal.
It could be better. No, I completely agree. I thought that was going to be a useful move, and it just wasn't. So, um, I would get rid of Doc Rivers. I would see if you can finish out the year with the interim coach, see if the team can go on a little bit of a run, and inform your offseason based on that. But I would not trade Giannis at the deadline. I did see a team that just completely quit on Tuesday, though, and that is on coaching. I mean, if I'm like, you can't not be embarrassed by what your team put out there. Like, this has happened with the Wolves before, and those are the press conferences where Chris Finch just kind of goes nuclear, and then the next game he'll either get thrown out or you get probably one of the best defensive performances of the season from the Wolves. That just doesn't happen game after game after game for the Bucks, and that to me is a clear sign that it is a team that does not necessarily completely respect their coach or think that they can just like get by with more, and there's just not a lot of discipline within their scheme. And so that would be my thing. I think right now your step one is you just need to make a change at the coaching spot, see what happens the second half of the season, see who you're keeping, see who you're getting rid of, see who you're starting things over with, and then you maybe look at a Giannis move when the summer comes.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's just, I don't know. Like you said, it was just such a disaster performance after a brutal loss against Denver, where like if they were going to get back into this season, they had to capitalize on like the schedule luck of playing teams without their guys. And I mean, I get it, like fire the coach, like that riles something up, you make a deadline move to add someone or whatever. There's just no, like, what's their ceiling? Like,
they could win a playoff round with Giannis. I mean, you could make the semifinals.
I don't think they will, because they're not going to get up out of the play-in, and I don't think they can beat the Pistons or the Knicks. So
we're talking about the hypothetical though, where they do go on a run here in the second half after they make a coaching change and they do get into the playoffs. I think they could win a first round game. I really do. I mean, as long as you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, you don't ever say never.
It's just 5 games back of the 6th seed with 4 teams in between them. It's tough.
It's part seeing how your team responds. It's also part just seeing what you have. Because even, let's go with the hypothetical that you do trade Giannis. Like, you still kind of have to structure a team, and you have to figure out like who is
especially
worthwhile.
If we don't have a pick.
Yeah, who's worthwhile keeping around. Like Kevin Porter Jr. is probably not. Like Kuzma's probably not. But it's like who is, like AJ Green is actually like I like AJ Green. I think he's a solid player. Ryan Rollins, solid player. Like, see who some of these guys are that you want to keep on your roster. Like, there is some merit in this. And I just, man, I will say I've been in a couple press conferences with Doc Rivers. I think he's really fun to listen to. I think he's a great guy. I don't know if there's ever going to be a more overrated coach in the 2010s and 2020s than Doc Rivers is. I mean, he won the title with the Celtics, and he's gone to a lot of places with high expectations and loaded rosters, thinking that he was going to be the response in a pressure-filled win now scenario, and has underperformed at every single stop. I'm not surprised that it is currently going this way for Milwaukee. Again, respect to him. I think he's a great guy. He's fun to listen to. He seems like a really, really good person. Man, what an overrated last 15 years.
Yeah, and I just think, like, going back to the Beringer discussion, they just haven't had any draft picks like that work out, basically. Like, it just hasn't. If you're going to be a team like you just got to hit on some of these. Like, they could really use Joan Beringer. They can really use Jalen Clark. Like, these are flawed players, especially in Jalen's case, but like, just don't have enough of those guys on top of whatever off-court stuff Giannis is getting booed and he's booing back. Like, it's getting ugly. And like, maybe from a pure fan perspective, maybe that's the thing that like you want to get out ahead of it. Let Giannis go before like you sour what was an incredible 10 years.
They need to make a move very quickly, and I do think the first one needs to be head coach before Giannis. I mean, I just think the Giannis thing, I just think that needs to be very well thought out. I would not approach it at the deadline. I think that's too quick. I just think you need to wait until the summer, because it's projected to be a pretty big summer. There's going to be probably some stars on the move. I just think you have to kind of wait and see with what you have here in this second half of the season. Make a move, start over from scratch on the bench, and go from there.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Lastly, let's talk about the game before the Bucks game, the craziest win against the Spurs, where they started they're down 16-0. You mentioned to me that like you had your gamer wrote. I think Chris Hines said the same thing in his newsletter, that it was one of those where you just kind of you could have written the whole story and then with one word or with one phrase go, and then it all changed, and keep what you wrote and write something new, but or just delete the whole thing. But yeah, they come back at the end, despite a Rudy Gobert flagrant foul and a step in that caused them to miss the Bucks game. But I want to ask you, before we talk about the clutch magic from Ant on the stretch, with just both the atmosphere inside Target Center, from the fans and all that stuff, as well as the vibe in the locker room after the game.
Yeah, the vibe at Target Center was unbelievable. And I know I mentioned to you before, but it's amazing what happens when the game is at a reasonable time on a school night and it's against a pretty good opponent. Like, parents want to bring their kids. It was a full arena, which has not happened super often this year. It's not been a super lively environment for a lot of the season. It was packed, and 6 o'clock start Sunday night, Victor Wembanyama, like it was crazy. And I would say for about 2.5 quarters it wasn't. And then the Wolves kind of started to creep their way back in. And then a couple of those things happened where the refs made a couple calls that got the crowd into it a little bit, and got them mad at the refs. And then by proxy, the Wolves mounted a couple runs, and the lid kind of just came off from there. It was a crazy environment, man. Like it was right up there with the Oklahoma City game. I would say it was just as good as the Oklahoma City game, which is, I would say, my highest bar. I thought the Oklahoma City game was as lively as any of the playoff games, maybe slightly lower than Game 5 in the Lakers series. I think that was the last one at home before they eliminated 4. Right up there with that one. So it was top tier Target Center. It's about as good as it gets for a regular season game. From a locker room perspective, I would say it was pretty close to. I mean, it was lively. It was business as usual after a win. I feel like after every win, the locker room is a pretty good place to be in. I mean, unless it's one of those where they play a really bad team and they only win by like 2 points when they probably should have won by 20, and they play with their food for most of the game. Those aren't as fun after wins, but locker room was pretty lively. I mean, it was a locker room after a win. Ant was pretty excited. He loved his last second shots.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell. So he was really enjoying things. Nas talked a lot about, again, how like they know that they have the talent. They know they're supremely talented, and they just kind of play with their food sometimes and dig themselves into holes, and sometimes kind of magically come to and in the right moments. So he gave some really good answers on that, but just overall, it was definitely a good mood in there. You can just kind of tell right now with this team that they're turning a corner, like from a morale standpoint. It was even early in the season, after that like Wizards win early in the season, where they just kind of squeaked that one out, and like some of the bad teams that they were playing, you could tell they were a little bored, and like that they kind of just wanted to get the result and get out of there. You can kind of tell now that they're enjoying playing the game of basketball, and that it's been pretty fulfilling to them. And wins like Sunday night, like it's a little bit more palpable for sure.
Yeah, and I went back and watched the Wolves posted, I think it's called Track the Pack, on their YouTube channel, the little video series they have, and they had a little behind the scenes after that game. And Bones said something, I think he said something similar after the Bucks game, where he's like, when we play like that, no one can beat us. We're as good as anyone. And I think, like, confidence wise, that's where this team is at. I'm not sure they felt like that a couple weeks ago, or maybe they felt too much like that, and that was causing the the up and down play. But yeah, like on New Year's Eve, I don't think this team, there was something going on. I know, like, it wasn't even anything like big. There wasn't like an incident. It certainly like wasn't like even like how D'Lo and Rudy. I don't think it was even like that. I just think something, maybe it was just moodiness or whatever. But I really think that practice in Miami before the Heat game out there, I think it reset them, and clearly like they've just been kicking butt. They're on pace for 54 wins now to start the year. They've been on a 60 win pace, 6-0 since Thanksgiving. They'll probably play probably somewhere between there. I wouldn't expect them to win at a 60 win pace for the second half of the season. But the other thing for that Spurs game was just Ant down the stretch. Holy cow! The shot with like 2 minutes and change left, just from the baseline, the mid range jumper, just incredible. And I thought the last possession, or the last offensive possession, where 2-minute report said it should have been offensive 3 seconds on Julius. There was a missed call in San Antonio earlier, so you wash out in term if you want to complain about the refs. Both teams kind of wash out there or whatever. Julius he seals off his man and seals off Wemby, because if Ant makes that drive and Julius is not standing there for a screen, Ant shoots a different shot. But like if Ant shoots that shot, Wemby slaps it into the third row, obviously. But screens off Wemby, screens off Julius's own man, and Ant goes right around, hits a little floater that's not really in Ant's bag from what we've seen, but hits a nice floater before Cornette can rotate over. Both times in the clutch, and Jaden had a nice pull-up jumper to take the lead on the offensive possession before that. This team is unbelievably different in the clutch than they were a year ago. And the biggest thing is just Ant, mostly through the use of the mid-range. Obviously, that Oklahoma City game you talked about, kind of the same shot that he hit one in Houston, the kind of falling away from the left slot three or whatever. But the mid-range and the post-up game for Ant has been down the stretch. It's been incredibly valuable, and he said it like it, and in the media availability after that game was like, down the stretch, I need the ball. I'm going to get the ball, and he'll make the right pass if they sent 3 people at him. He'd give it to someone else, obviously, but like it's that might have been like the first time where I looked at this team and I went, team who win the title. They're not favored to do so or whatever. Certainly, there's at least OKC and Denver have better odds or whatever. Or Vegas says a lot of teams, but in my personal whatever. But like, I think this team is as good as any. They can get it done. Will they? That'll be the fun of it. But like, this game was like the first time I was like, okay, here we go. This team's got it.
Because Ant's pulling it together in the clutch. Like, his brain is pulling things together in the clutch. Like, I know he's always going to be pretty hell-bent on taking the shot, but the shots that he's taking are smarter. Like, he's being much more judicious with the ball, and it's making all the difference. I thought what was most impressive on his kind of ceiling shot there on Wemby, when he went at Wemby, was how he used space. It was very SGA-like. Like how he started at the 3-point line, hesitated a couple times, and went into the elbow, hesitated a couple times. Like, just the way that he was patient and like created space and then took it away, and then was just kind of messing with Wemby a little bit and just getting him to try and close some space, and then matadoring a little bit. I thought that was really impressive. Like, that to me alone, that one possession to me was like, oh, okay. Like, it's not just a pull-up three anymore. It's not just a step back. It's not just the same predictable step back three. Like, there are a couple things here that are evolving inside the perimeter. And that's like these high percentage looks. Like, if you can get to high percentage looks at a pretty easy clip, that's what the best players in the league do. SGA does it all the time. Kawhi Leonard did it when he won a title. Kevin Durant did it when he won a title. They get to easy looks at will. And if Ant is able to do that on Victor Wembanyama, you're right. I mean, they can go pretty far in the playoffs when they want to. I mean, the guy that talked about, the step back, Luka Doncic, he does that pretty well too. He gets to areas at the elbow and areas at the dunker pretty easily by changing speed and changing direction. That's exactly what Ant did in the final possession of that game on the best defender in the league, and it puts a lot of people on notice. It put me on notice. I kind of sat there for a little bit after that. I mean, I know I'm putting a lot on one possession, but I just kind of sat there. I was like I haven't seen that from him because he does the same stuff every single time in the clutch. Like for so many years, it was a broken record. Step back three, pull up three, does not pass, and you know probably what the outcome is going to be. But now he's using time and he's using space and he's taking his time and he's being judicious with the ball, and it's pretty encouraging, man. It's pretty encouraging stuff.
It's another example of, obviously there's warranted criticism of Ant and any player. Like, it's not to say he's above criticism, right? But anytime you point out something in Ant's game that, like, this isn't good enough, we need to see improvement here, he does it and makes you look silly every single time. A lot of us, myself included, talked about, I'm not sure about the mid-range, like that's an inefficient shot or whatever. He's integrated it damn near perfectly, I would say, especially down the stretch. And like you mentioned, the clutch time stuff from last year was really, really bad, and this year it's been solid, and
Really
especially
good.
especially against the Spurs was awesome. And that's where we're at. And goes back to the Gobert trade. Why getting these playoff reps? 4 straight postseasons. Let me count them up. 1, 2 plus 6 is 8 postseason series the last 4 years for Ant. Throw in 3 playing games. That to me, that is the biggest, especially for a player like Ant. It might be something to ask Tim Connolly if he felt like getting Ant specifically playoff series was important, or if it's more about any young player of Ant's caliber. If just getting reps like that is important, but it just shows like the importance of that, getting all of that. Like a big reason they lost to Dallas 2 years ago is they just weren't ready. Thought their inconsistent effort during the regular season hurt them against OKC. All of that stuff is going to be less certain now, and whenever they hopefully if, but when they when the stars align and they're able to get past the West Finals, hopefully it's going to be because of all the other stuff that they've gone through to this point, specifically with Ant, who to me just like just takes the stuff in like a sponge and immediately makes you look silly for doubting anything.
Yep. And that was a talking point for a very long time last year and the year before, is Ant and go-ahead buckets.
Shooting like 80% this year.
Yeah, national talking point. And this year, he's putting a lot of people on notice. But again, I don't want to underrate getting to easy looks. How easy is it for you to get to easy looks? And at first it was easy for him to get to difficult looks. And now we're starting to see some of the stuff where it is easier for him to get to easy looks. And it's good stuff. I mean, if anyone who's a Wolves fan, anyone who's an Anthony Edwards fan, that is a very encouraging sign for a 24-year-old.
Yeah, and the scoring's come consistent, and like you mentioned, it's come easy. A year ago at this time, it just felt like every bucket was difficult for Ant. That's where we're going to close it. Andrew, anything to plug with your coverage?
Nothing right now. I mean, I had something go out with Jade McDaniels a little bit ago. Go give that a look. I just, after the Heat game this past week, I couldn't help but just watch him on the floor and say, wow, what an asset he's become. He does everything. He makes everybody on the floor around him better. And so I needed to write about him, and I went and asked Eric Spoelstra about him too, because I figured that was someone who would be good to talk to about a wing that likes to disrupt games. So we'll give that a look. I'm still working on something about Chris Finch. I'm gonna hopefully get that out here by the end of the month. But that's another thing that I've been kind of head on the fire here, and just really want to make sure that I get that reporting done correctly before I get that out. And just check out the game stuff, man. Canis is on fire right now. We got a lot of stuff going, and the site's The site's got good stuff. The Twitter accounts put out good stuff. The Blue Sky accounts put out good stuff. Check out Canis Hoopus, man.
Absolutely. Check us out over at canishoopus.com. But for Andrew, I'm Ryan. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Go Wolves.
Hey, you.